A dark cloud, thick with deadly acid, has been spotted floating high above Venus, and what's even crazier is that it might actually be alive. NASA discovered this bizarre cloud hanging in the upper layers of Venus's atmosphere, moving in ways that don't make sense for something natural. It twists and drifts strangely, sometimes even blocking light as if it's trying to hide itself. But this isn't a cloud made of water like we have on Earth. No, it's filled with something far more dangerous, something like battery acid. And inside that toxic mist, scientists believe there could be tiny, almost invisible creatures floating, feeding, and living in one of the most hostile environments imaginable. Now, NASA is preparing to drop a probe straight into that deadly cloud, hoping to uncover its secrets. While the surface of Venus is a hellish nightmare of crushing pressure and unbearable heat, something strange happens if you go about 30 to 40 miles above. Up there, it's surprisingly calm and much less deadly. It's not exactly comfortable, it's still hot and acidic, but it's nothing compared to the furnace below. And it's within this weirdly tolerable zone that the mysterious cloud was seen. Scientists are absolutely stunned. This cloud doesn't behave like anything we know. It moves strangely, and it blocks ultraviolet light in ways that defy natural explanation. It's almost as if it's alive or hiding something. Some researchers are even starting to wonder if it's not a cloud at all but something else entirely, something we've never encountered before. Humans have been suspicious about Venus for a very long time. Back in the 1800s, many scientists believed Venus might be covered in lush swamps, maybe even hosting dinosaurs. But all that hope vanished when the first probes reached Venus in the 1960s. What they found was horrifying: crushing heat, lava plains, and a sky full of poisonous gases. No friendly swamps, no dinosaurs, just death. Now, all these decades later, this new dark cloud shows up, reflecting light in bizarre ways. It's not made of water vapor like Earth's clouds, it's made of strong acid, something so corrosive it would melt flesh and bone. And inside this acidic cloud, there could be microscopic life forms, extreme creatures, the kind that thrive in volcanic pits and toxic waste here on Earth. These tiny potential life forms wouldn't need soil or water to survive. They could just float in the thick atmosphere, absorbing light and feeding off sulfur compounds. They could drift endlessly through Venus's poisonous skies, carried by the winds. This idea, that life could exist by floating freely in acid clouds, is mind-blowing. No roots, no trees, no oceans, just living mist. NASA is taking this very seriously. They've planned 2 missions to Venus, Da Vinci and Veritas. Da Vinci will dive straight into the clouds to sample gases and search for life, while Veritas will scan the surface, looking for ancient secrets hidden beneath the planet's crust. If they find signs of old oceans or volcanic activity, it would make the idea that Venus once had life go from a wild guess to a real possibility. The big question is, if Venus once had water and life, what happened? How did it all disappear? Many scientists think Venus suffered a planet-wide catastrophe, a greenhouse apocalypse that boiled away its oceans and poisoned its atmosphere. If that's true, then whatever life existed on the surface had 2 grim options: adapt to the sky or die out completely. Maybe, just maybe, some forms of life chose to float upward, surviving above the inferno. Here on Earth, we found microbes that can survive inside nuclear reactors and creatures that live in the darkest volcanic vents, thriving on pure sulfur. Life is stubborn and endlessly adaptable. If it can survive the extreme conditions on Earth, why not on Venus, floating invisibly in clouds of acid high above a burning world? Some scientists are even starting to whisper incredible theories. What if those clouds aren't just lifeless formations? What if they're living colonies, massive floating structures filled with microscopic organisms, all working together like enormous acid-filled balloons? It sounds wild, but nature has shown us again and again that life finds a way to adapt and organize in the strangest environments. If such colonies exist, they could be quietly surviving, drifting high above Venus's fiery death's cape, hidden from human eyes for all this time. Now imagine if that's true, it would change everything we think we know about life beyond Earth. Life might not need oceans or continents. It might only need a way to float, absorb energy, and survive. But some scientists are going even further with their theories. What if Venus wasn't just another planet? What if Venus was the origin of life itself, not just for Venus but for Earth too? There's a fascinating idea called panspermia, suggesting that life can be transported between planets. Maybe long ago Venus was a paradise with oceans and forests. Then disaster struck, a massive asteroid impact or a runaway greenhouse effect, and pieces of Venus containing microscopic life were blasted into space. Some of those life seeds could have drifted across the solar system, eventually landing on the young Earth. It sounds like science fiction, but it would explain why life on Earth appeared so quickly, almost suspiciously fast after the planet cooled. If true, we wouldn't just be neighbors to whatever is floating in Venus's clouds, we would be their descendants. There's a darker side to this theory too, a warning hidden in the clouds. Venus might not just be our ancient past, it could be our future. We've been warming Earth's atmosphere for decades, and Venus shows us what happens when climate change goes too far. Venus is the final chapter, a greenhouse nightmare where the oceans boil away, the sky turns to acid, and the surface becomes a burning wasteland. Maybe life survives, but only barely, floating in toxic clouds, hoping for some miracle. As we launch missions like Da Vinci and Veritas, we're not just searching for alien life. We're also confronting a terrifying reflection of our own possible fate. The Da Vinci mission will plunge directly into Venus's clouds, analyzing gases and hunting for chemical signs of life. Veritas will orbit the planet, scanning the surface for clues, signs of ancient oceans, rivers, and tectonic activity. If Venus ever had water for even a few million years, that would have been plenty of time for life to take root. Some models suggest Venus might have had oceans for as long as 3 billion years, longer than many parts of Earth's surface have existed. If Venus stayed cool until about 700 million years ago, then the window for life wasn't just briefly open, it was wide and welcoming for eons. The problem is, Venus resurfaced itself. At some point, the planet melted its outer crust, destroying any surface evidence of past life. The rocks that might have preserved fossils were swallowed and recycled deep within the planet. But the clouds? The clouds stayed. They're still there, still carrying mysteries. Maybe, just maybe, they're holding on to the last surviving whispers of ancient life, floating quietly above the wreckage of a once livable world. The deeper scientists look into Venus's atmosphere, the stranger it gets. They've detected odd chemicals like carbonyl sulfide, sulfur dioxide, and phosphine, compounds that, on Earth, are usually linked to biological processes or volcanic activity. The chemical mix floating above Venus doesn't look random. It looks messy, complicated, and suspicious. There's something up there called the unknown UV absorber, a strange substance that blocks ultraviolet light, acting like a natural sunscreen, but no one knows what it is. It doesn't match anything we've ever seen before, either on Earth or in space. Some researchers think it might be an exotic chemical. Others wonder if it might be something alive. Tiny organisms clustered together, forming a floating veil to protect themselves from deadly radiation. Back in 2019, astronomers discovered something even weirder. They noticed that the UV absorption pattern in Venus's atmosphere wasn't constant. It pulsed over time, showing a kind of rhythm. It changed like weather patterns, almost like the atmosphere had moods. That's not normal behavior for simple chemicals. That hints at something reacting, something living. Then in 2021, another strange match was found. The color of Venus's unknown absorber was suspiciously similar to something called red oil, a mix of organic compounds floating in sulfuric acid. That's not a coincidence you can easily brush off. It's suspiciously close, adding even more fuel to the idea that life could be hiding up there. Another piece of the puzzle involves Venus's volcanoes. Scientists once thought Venus was geologically dead, but now there's evidence that its volcanoes might still be active today. If so, they could be injecting fresh nutrients into the clouds, food for any microscopic life forms floating above. On Earth, life clings to volcanic vents deep in the oceans, living off chemical energy. If life can do it here, why not on Venus? And when the mysterious cloud first appeared, it was right around the time Venus revealed fresh volcanic activity. It's almost like the planet itself was hinting that there's more to discover. For decades, Venus was dismissed as just a burning wasteland, too hot, too deadly, too broken to matter. But now, it's turning out to be one of the biggest cosmic mysteries right next door to us. A planet that once might have had oceans, rivers, and rain now hides its secrets in toxic clouds. And maybe, just maybe, something up there is still alive. As we stare into Venus's poison skies, it feels like the planet is staring right back at us, whispering warnings we're only beginning to understand. This isn't just about finding alien life. It's about learning where we came from, and where we might be heading if we're not careful. The thing is that phosphine detection wasn't a one-time fluke. Another round of measurements in 2024 spotted it again. Not at the same 20 parts per billion like before, but still enough to keep the mystery alive. However, a catch remains. That original study still hasn't been peer-reviewed, which means scientists are examining it under a microscope, debating every detail. It's hanging in that uncomfortable place between possible breakthrough and mistake. But whether or not the numbers are perfect, the fact that phosphine showed up again is hard to ignore, and it's the kind of thing that demands a real explanation. Now here's where things get serious. On Venus, there are no volcanoes currently active enough to spit out phosphine. If the gas were coming from lava or volcanic vents, Venus would need to be in a near-constant state of eruption, violently throwing material into the atmosphere every day. But that's not what's happening. Venus, despite its hellish appearance, is geologically pretty calm. So where is this gas coming from? One wild idea suggests that if life exists on Venus, it might use a type of fat that doesn't dissolve in acid. Scientists have proposed synthetic versions of fatty acids, swapping parts of the molecule with acid-proof elements. Other researchers take it even further, suggesting that hypothetical Venusian microbes could be built from strange compounds called red oil. These are made of polyyllic carbon chains that could survive the brutal sulfuric acid rain. Imagine little alien oil bubbles floating in the sky, tough and resistant to one of the harshest environments imaginable. Even more interesting, some scientists propose that these microbes might actually produce ammonia themselves. The ammonia would act like a chemical shield, neutralizing the deadly acid around them, creating tiny pockets of survivable space in an otherwise fatal environment. And it gets crazier. The production of ammonia would mess with the atmospheric chemistry, particularly sulfur dioxide levels. Strangely enough, telescopes have noticed that the amount of sulfur dioxide high in Venus's atmosphere doesn't match what should be there. It's missing, and nobody can explain why, unless something is altering the chemistry. Some models suggest that Venusian life could exist in a wild cycle, floating in acidic droplets, growing over time, then sinking down into hotter, drier layers of the atmosphere where they dry out, shrink, and get carried back up by rising air currents. It would be an endless loop: grow, fall, dry out, float back up, repeat. But as with any scientific debate, there are disagreements. Some researchers argue that Venus's lower haze layers are too still for particles to float back upward. They suggest a different survival method: evolution into ultra-dark, almost black microbes that soak up sunlight for energy and buoyancy. These dark microbes would essentially heat themselves with the sun, staying warm and suspended in the air. There's even a physics trick that could help them, called negative photophoresis, where sunlight literally pushes small particles upward. In the strange rules of Venus, it's weird science, but it's not impossible. The longer this mystery stays unsolved, the deeper it gets. NASA is not brushing this off. The space agency already has 2 missions lined up: Da Vinci Plus and Veritas. Da Vinci Plus will dive straight into Venus's atmosphere, sampling the gases and hunting for signs of phosphine or other unusual chemicals. Veritas, on the other hand, will orbit and scan the surface using radar to create detailed maps. Both missions are scheduled to launch sometime between 2028 and 2030, depending on how things go. These probes could finally settle the question, or just raise a dozen new ones we never even considered. And remember, phosphine detection was only the beginning. Strange things continued happening. Labs on Earth have been trying to recreate Venus's brutal environment, mixing gases, turning up the heat, cranking up the pressure, trying to simulate how phosphine could form without life. It's frustrating work because chemistry doesn't behave the same way under Venus-like conditions. Sometimes, experiments reveal chemical reactions nobody predicted, reactions that push the limits of our understanding and sometimes even break what we thought were ironclad rules. Meanwhile, astronomers keep pointing their telescopes at Venus, watching for changes. Some think phosphine levels might rise and fall with seasons, or maybe with some unknown activity inside the planet's atmosphere. They don't have enough data yet to draw conclusions, but long-term monitoring could reveal patterns hiding in the chaos. Of course, not everyone agrees with the life theory. Some researchers believe that unknown geological or atmospheric processes might be creating the phosphine. If that's the case, it would still mean new chemistry, something we've never seen before, which would be an incredible discovery in its own right. But no matter how you look at it, the facts remain. Something is producing phosphine on Venus. And right now, no known process fits the bill. Life is not the assumption. It's just that when you eliminate the impossible, what remains, however strange, has to be considered. We're not hoping for life. We're being pushed toward it by the stubborn refusal of the universe to explain itself any other way. If life can exist floating in acid clouds, it shatters what we thought we knew about where life can survive, and where we should be looking for it. And it leads to a wild thought. If microbial life can survive Venus's acid clouds, then life could be hiding in the clouds of gas giants, in alien atmospheres with thick clouds and savage storms. The universe might be teeming with weird, durable versions of biology that look nothing like Earth life. We're not just talking about surface dwellers here, we're talking about life that surfs deadly skies, adapting to pressures, acids and temperatures that would kill humans in seconds. Think about it. Venus's surface is so deadly it can melt lead. It's a place where probes sent from Earth die in under an hour, crushed and fried beyond recognition. Yet, about 50 kilometers above that nightmare, the environment becomes oddly familiar. Temperatures around 30 degrees Celsius, pressures not too different from Earth's surface. Sure, the air is still toxic and sulfuric acid hangs in every drop, but compared to the inferno below, it's a surprisingly livable zone if life has adapted just right. Here's the twist. On planets like Jupiter, phosphine can form naturally because of the planet's enormous internal heat and pressure, smashing atoms together to make complex molecules. But Venus doesn't have that kind of deep, crushing force. It's not big enough, not hot enough at its core. Which means that something else must be making the phosphine. And that something doesn't have a clear explanation yet. Before jumping to conclusions, scientists are being careful. No organisms have been seen, no floating blobs captured in photos. Only the presence of a molecule that shouldn't be there, detected by multiple independent telescopes. And that's why this discovery is such a big deal. Phosphine is simple, made of one phosphorus atom bonded to 3 hydrogen atoms. But on Earth, it's a marker for life. Swamps produce it. The guts of fish produce it. Even the breath of penguins carries traces of it. And yet, there are no swamps or penguins on Venus, only thick clouds of acid blowing at hundreds of kilometers per hour. Still, phosphine was detected at an altitude of about 30 to 40 kilometers above the surface, right in that temperate high-flying layer where conditions are strange but not instantly fatal. Scientists didn't take it lightly. First, the James Clerk Maxwell Telescope in Hawaii spotted the phosphine signal. Then, a completely separate team confirmed it using the ALMA array in Chile. They reviewed the data carefully, cross-checking, and still came up with the same result. Phosphine was there. Up above the death clouds, in a layer that, oddly enough, resembles a tropical Earth afternoon, if you ignore the acid part. It's the most unlikely place for life, and yet the place that seems most promising. The deeper you dive into Venus's history, the stranger it gets. In the early days of space exploration, Venus was a major target. The Soviet Union sent landers, Venera probes, and one even survived long enough to snap a historic photo before it was crushed and fried. NASA followed up with missions like Magellan in the 1980s, creating the first detailed radar maps of the planet's surface. But after that, interest faded. Venus became the forgotten twin of Earth, overshadowed by the flashy promises of Mars exploration. That's changing now. Still, the phosphine discovery has stirred controversy. Some scientists argue that maybe the telescopes were wrong. Maybe the instruments picked up interference. Maybe the math was off. Science demands skepticism. It thrives on repeatable results, not wishful thinking. The critics are not dismissing the data, they just want rock-solid proof. They want confirmation with better instruments and direct sampling, not just remote detection. If those microbes are real, it opens up huge questions. Maybe they're descendants of ancient life from billions of years ago, back when Venus might have had oceans and a cooler climate. Maybe they're survivors, riding the currents of a dying world. Or, crazier still, maybe they came from somewhere else, blown in from space, hitching a ride on interstellar dust. Is speculation, sure. But serious scientists are willing to consider it because the alternative is equally wild. That Venus's chemistry is even stranger than we ever imagined. What makes this even harder to dismiss is where the research was published. Major science journals, peer-reviewed, from respected names. This wasn't some fringe website making wild claims. Real data. Real stakes. Real mystery. And because of that, the race is on. NASA is weighing which Venus missions to prioritize. 2 mission concepts are frontrunners, one to scan the planet's surface for signs of volcanic activity, and another to dive directly through the clouds, sampling every molecule it can grab on the way down. Picture it, a probe hurtling through sulfuric acid clouds, snapping images, analyzing gases, maybe even capturing direct evidence of life, or at least of something Earth has never seen. That's the future unfolding right now. Space is not neat. It's messy. It's unpredictable. It laughs at our assumptions. But if life can cling to a nightmare like Venus, it would prove one thing beyond a doubt. Life is more stubborn, more adaptable, and more determined than we ever imagined. And maybe, just maybe, while we were busy looking for aliens light years away, they've been quietly floating in the skies of our closest neighbor, watching us all along.